Flash in the Dark, Chapter 32, Behind the Mask. Nearly 20 minutes later, Bruce was sitting in the Central City Police Department precinct. He'd been here before. He made a point to know everything he could about the cities where he had placed branches of Wayne Enterprises. The people on his payroll were important. Everyone was, really. He liked to know which cities had corrupt police departments because of resource droughts, and which ones had genuine people who wanted to help. So far, Central City had only a few bad eggs here and there, the vast majority of whom were currently serving time in Iron Heights. Everyone in the precinct at the moment was talking about what had happened at Mercury Labs. The Flash had pulled Bruce out of the way of the bomb, but hadn't been able to save the man who'd been holding it. He'd been an ex-employee of Mercury Labs who had been fired when they'd discovered him stealing dangerous chemicals. At the moment, Bruce was talking to Captain Singh, giving his statement. Though he kept his description of the Flash much more vague than was strictly truthful. He glanced up from his conversation as the doors to the bullpen opened and a short woman with long brown hair flowing behind her entered. Objectively, she was quite good-looking. Trim but not overly curvy, built like a runner. She was in a gray Queen Consolidated t-shirt, black jeans, and very worn gray sneakers. She wandered over to one of the detectives' desks and handed over a packet of information, presumably on a case. Her eyes caught Bruce's attention, though. They were a bright, sparkling hazel. The only thing missing was the crackle of lightning and power that had been present that morning, but he was almost completely sure that he'd found the Flash, hiding right under the nose of the police. Captain Singh glanced around to see what Bruce was looking at as he finished jotting down the report he was writing. He grinned slightly. That's right. You didn't get the chance to meet Barry last time you were in Central. Come on, I'll introduce you. Captain Singh led Bruce over to the detective's desk. Mr. Wayne, this is Bernice Allen. Barry, this is Mr. Bruce Wayne. Singh said, nodding to the woman. Barry smiled at the millionaire, much more at ease than most at meeting him. She held out her hand to shake. It's just Barry, please. I've never liked Bernice, she said, grinning slightly. Bruce took her hand and kissed the back of it. Like almost every other woman he did this to, she blushed bright red and stuttered slightly. The blonde at the desk stifled a laugh, but Bruce ignored him. Well, Barry, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Many of your coworkers talked about you quite a bit last time I was here. I'm glad to see you got out of your coma and seem none the worse for it, he said, smiling smoothly. Barry smiled wide, her blush growing darker. Thank you, Mr. Wayne. I hope to see you at the charity event I'm hosting for the CCPD on Wednesday. He winked. She blinked and nodded. Bruce checked his watch. Sadly, I have to head off back to Wayne Enterprises. Perhaps we could have dinner sometime. I could take you on a private tour. He handed her a business card. As his hand met hers again, he felt a spark of literal electricity, like he'd been walking in socks on a shag carpet. He smiled as he again kissed the back of her hand before he walked away, leaving her stunned. Barry blinked at the card in her hand, then looked over at Eddie, who was trying his best not to burst out laughing. What just happened? Barry asked. Most of the nearby officers who'd been listening into the conversation burst out laughing. Eddie broke down, snorting laughs, and had to lay his head down on his desk. Bruce slipped into the back of his limo and smiled as Alfred began driving away from the precinct. Alfred glanced into the rearview mirror. You seem pleased, Master Bruce, Alfred pointed out. Bruce nodded. I expected it to be much harder to find our speedster. I need to take a deeper look at her history, but I'm nearly certain I found her, he admitted. Alfred nodded. Very good, sir. Iris West stormed into Barry's lab at around 5 that afternoon. She looked like hell in heels, as per usual, but she seemed to be angry about something. Barry held up a hand in the universal wait gesture, as she carefully continued to mix chemicals for fingerprinting. Iris paused, seeing that Barry was in the middle of something potentially hazardous due to the goggles and white lab coat that were rarely seen around her lab. It took Barry another 10 minutes to finish, but Iris waited as calmly as she could. When Barry was done, she stepped away from the chemicals and removed her goggles. Iris, what have I done? You look angry. The only thing Barry could think was that Iris had found out about the Flash, that she herself was in fact the hero Iris was blogging about, but she didn't want to give herself away if that wasn't it. Eddie told me, Iris practically shouted. Did Eddie remember her catching his flowers at super speeds nearly a week ago? He'd been so hopped up on painkillers that both she and Joe were sure he wouldn't remember their slip in their excitement of Barry getting her powers back. Eddie told you what? Barry pressed. Iris rolled her eyes. Bruce fucking Wayne, that's what. He flirted with you, openly. He gave you his number, and you just stood there like an idiot. Iris said, throwing her arms up in exasperation. Barry let out an internal sigh and pulled off her lab coat. Iris, I don't think he was flirting with me, she said, shaking her head. Iris scoffed. Eddie told me everything. That was flirting, Barry. Maybe we could get dinner? Seriously? I know you're not exactly the best at the whole dating scene, but really. Also, I want to know your secret. Iris demanded. Barry pulled off her plastic gloves, depositing them in a hazmat trash can just for safety as she hid her face from her sister. She would love to tell her sister her secret, but for Iris's safety, she couldn't. What do you mean? Barry tried for casual, but she wasn't sure she hit it. Iris rolled her eyes and leaned on the table near the middle of the room, away from the chemicals. You and your ability to attract the most handsome, richest, most famous men in a 5-mile radius. First, Oliver Queen, on your trip to Starling, literally asks you to stay in Starling for him. Now, you've got Bruce Wayne asking you out to dinner. How do you do it? I thought it was just your nerd allure, but now I'm not so sure. She mused, wagging a finger at her sister. Barry laughed and shrugged. I have no idea, Iris. Besides, he was just being nice. I mean, he's already met everyone else at the precinct. He was here when I was in my coma, Barry reasoned. Iris shook her head. That's not what Eddie said. Did he really give you his number? She asked. Barry sighed and rummaged in her pocket, pulling out the card he'd given her less than 2 hours earlier. He gave me a card. Hardly personal, Iris. Barry began to flip through the results that were printing out of her printer. She jumped when Iris shrieked. Spinning around, she was expecting something to be going horribly wrong. Maybe the man in yellow was back. She found Iris bouncing up and down, waving around the business card Bruce Wayne had given her. Taking a deep breath and praying Iris hadn't noticed any faster than normal movement, she raised an eyebrow as Iris continued to wave the card around. Iris, you're starting to scare me, and I routinely assist with autopsies. It took Iris a few minutes to calm down enough to form words. When she did, she stuck the card in Barry's face. Iris, what? Barry began. Iris pointed at the back of the card, where there was a phone number clearly written in what appeared to be ballpoint pen. Above the number on the card was written, Call me, in slanted cursive. Barry stared. He gave you his personal phone number, Barry. A millionaire. The second one you've met, I might add, gave you his personal phone number. That's 2 millionaires you will have in your phone, Iris squealed. Barry stared at the number for a minute before turning to her sister. Iris, I'm not interested in him. After Len, I need to be on my own for a while. Barry turned away from her sister, and Iris stepped around and pulled Barry into a hug. I know he did a number on your heart, Barry. I know. I wish I could find him and kick his ass, she lamented. Barry laughed and hugged her sister back. Iris handed Barry back the card. I still think you should call him. Let him down easy, you know? Yeah, you're right. I'll do that. Barry conceded. Iris nodded. I am going to go talk to Eddie. Do you know where Dad is? She asked. Barry shrugged. No idea. Sorry. Good luck, Barry said, waving her off. Iris stuck out her tongue and left. Barry had no problem hiding Iris's relationship with Eddie from Joe, mostly because it made her feel slightly better about lying to Iris about her powers. Now that Joe knew, the guilt about not telling her sister the truth was starting to eat away at her again. She sighed as she looked down at the card in her hand. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number on the back of the card.